Breakfast with Bob.
Hey everybody, Bob Babbitt here. Welcome to Breakfast with Bob. We are brought to you by the PTO, the Pro Triathletes Organization, by Amp Human, VeloFix, Normatec, Form Goggles, UCAN, and our Challenged Athletes Foundation. We recently had the opportunity to chat to one of my favorite people on the planet, three-time Ironman World Champion, Craig Alexander. How you doing, Craig?
I'm doing good, Bob. How are you?
I am spectacular. We were just chatting before we started that you win 3 out of 5 races last year, and you're still racing as a pro?
I had a couple of lucky days. Yeah, no, I still love to race. So what can I say? I'm a glutton for punishment.
And you're what, 47-ish?
I'll be 47 this month. Yeah, in a couple of weeks. So yeah, getting a little long in the tooth, but I still love to train. It's still a part of my weekly routine. I certainly don't train anywhere near the volumes or intensities that I used to do, but yeah, I love it. I love how it makes me feel. I love, just staying in good physical shape. And also I think mentally it helps. So yeah, just because I'm not racing world titles anymore, I don't think there's any reason to stop training and loving the sport.
Now, if you went out for a 5K with Lucy, your daughter, who wins?
I've still got her.
You?
Yeah, I've still got her. Just her specialty is the sort of shorter 800, 1500, and
she can take you there.
I've still, you know what?
You better set one up.
The old body, once it gets rolling, still got a little bit of speed. I mean, in high school, I was more a sprinter than a distance athlete. So I had a little bit of speed. It's just the old rig doesn't like to cooperate so much anymore. But now she's doing so well, her running has come on in leaps and bounds, and she seems to love it. As we were talking about off air, she's got a scholarship to a really nice school in Sydney. This year she changed schools, and she's got her heart set on coming to the US and getting a college scholarship. So I think the main thing is with Neri and I, we just try and make sure she enjoys it, and she loves to race for sure. But I think she enjoys the training as well, which is important, as you know.
For so many years, the pros were basically independent contractors. You're all working on your own. The PTO, the Pro Triathletes Organization, I'm liking what they're doing. I'm liking the fact that they're offering money and support. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's so long overdue. I think whenever you hear people talk about an athletes association or a union, or call it whatever you want, people get worried and scared. But I think it's the next level in the development of all sports for people who follow sports historically. All the big sports, they have a collective where the athletes get together and have a voice and a representation. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's about anything other than just another stakeholder, and a very important stakeholder in our sport, having a voice and contributing to the growth of the sport. It's not about what the athletes want. I think it's more about what the athletes can do to help grow the sport and take it to the next level. And, you and I have watched the sport for a long time. I think the evolution of all sports we're talking triathlon, with the technology the last decade, with equipment, software, all of that has gone to the next level. And I think this is just a logical next step in the structuring of our sport. And the PTO have done an amazing job. Charles and the team, I think it was a long time coming. It was a lot of work behind the scenes, but so far what we've seen has been nothing short of awesome. The support they've shown, and they don't want to work against anyone. They want to work with people. And I think it's going to be ultimately great for the athletes and great for the sport.
And Collins Cup, you'll be a captain?
Yeah, I'll be a captain of the international team with Erin Baker, Lisa Bentley, and Simon Whitfield. So that's going to be so much. For me, a part of the fun is not only going to be watching the best in the world run around and race, it's going to be getting to hang out with a few old timers and have a bit of fun. So yeah, it should be good. I think the whole concept is really good. Obviously this year's one got postponed because of the current situation globally, but I can't wait for next year. I think a different format, that sort of team format, it's just something that could be really interesting. And obviously there's going to be a few teething problems, no doubt, but I think it could be something that's really special, something that the athletes, if you look to tennis or golf. And I always look to those sports to see how they're structured and how they're set up. You know, they have their major
Right.
events, like their Grand Slams or their majors, but they also have, in tennis, they have the Davis Cup, and in golf, they have the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup. And, you know, the players love playing, love representing their region or their country. So I think it could be really exciting for the triathletes. It could be something a little bit different and a lot of fun.
Different is always good. I think this,
Yeah.
and I think triathlon's going to get a huge bump when the Olympics happen. With
Yep.
The mixed relay is going to add
Yeah.
all sorts of new. In fact, we're going to have 2 events on TV, right? 2 events in the games, and that mixed relay reminds me of the International Triathlon Grand Prix that started in Australia with the fast, and you got 4 athletes in a relay format, 2 guys, 2 women. That's going to be really cool for the sport as well.
It's going to be awesome. I think when I started into triathlon in the mid-90s, it hadn't even been in the Olympics
Right.
at that point. And now, 25 years on, I mean, if you're a 25-year-old triathlete, you've grown up with the Olympics. I mean, Tokyo will be the 6th inclusion of triathlon in the Olympic Games. And I think it's been awesome for our sport. To have Olympic status, I think it carries a lot of weight. And the fact that we can get another event in, mixed relay, which is super exciting. A lot of lead changes, tight technical courses. I think it's just great for the sport. But yeah, we did. I mean, one of the 2 reasons I started in triathlon were Welshie won in Hawaii in '94, and that was the same year, later that year, that the International Grand Prix Series, or the Formula One Series, as we used to call it, started. And I was lucky enough to be a part of that series for about 8 years. I qualified 2 years after I saw it, and yeah, it's such fun racing. Different formats, triple super sprints, enduros, eliminators, and tight racing in great locations, great crowds. It's packaged really well for TV. And, I think back to those races, you were racing Greg Welsh, Brad Bevan, Miles Stewart. You also had the next wave of Aussies coming through: Greg Bennett, Trent Chapman, Craig Walton, Macca, Chris Hill. And then you throw in all the internationals. We used to get Whitfield, Spencer Smith, Hamish Carter, Bevan Doherty, Andrew Johns. They were truly awesome races.
And just the variety. That's what I love. It's just if it's called triathlon, it's going to be fun to watch. Always is. So when I look back at your career, so obviously there's a ton of races, but the Lifetime Fitness race, the 250K changed your world. Winning that race where they sent the women off first, guys went off later, and whoever came across the line first got the big prize purse, national television. And at that point, Neri was living, you couldn't be traveling with you. That's a long way to go to come to the US, but it changed. It allowed you to travel with the family, right? When you win that race, and that stability, I think, helped take you to that next level.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Neri was in the US. She was in Colorado. I'd gone to Minnesota on my own. Lucy was only 8 weeks old. But yeah, I think the money is great, no question. I mean, as a professional athlete, that's your job.
Right.
But I think it was also just the satisfaction. It's still one of my favorite race victories in my career because of who was in the race. I mean, and how you had to get in. I mean, you had to either have an Olympic medal or a World Championship medal or a Hall of Fame resume to get invited. The unique format where we had to chase the girls. The boys would stand on the beach, the girls would take off, and we'd have to wait about 10 minutes. And so it was, you had to beat the boys, but you had to catch the girls as well. And I was the first guy who was able to, I think in the first 3 years, Barb Lindquist took the title twice, and then Loretta Harrop. So I was the first guy who was able to catch the girls, which is good because I wasn't that good at catching the girls when I was in high school. So, and it was just such a great race. As a short course athlete at the time, I'd wanted to go to the World Championships that year. Previously, and I'd made a couple of ITU Worlds, but in 2002, I got sick and was on the squad, but missed the team because I missed the selection races and came to the US. Yeah, I had the chicken pox. And came to the US and never really looked back. I loved all the races there: Chicago, LA, St. Anthony, St. Croix, Alcatraz. And, Lifetime was one of the big events on my calendar every year. It was just one day, July. they'd invite the best people. And I guess as an athlete, you're always searching for confidence and validation that you're on the right track. And for me, that was just a big checking the box that,
Right.
I had this physio degree, I had other things I could be doing, but it was a big risk to come to the US each year and spend 5 months and race, which I love to do. But I guess that race just so satisfying for a lot of reasons. And, I still think it's one of my best race wins.
Oh, no question. And when you came to long distance, when you came to Kona for the first time in '07, did you have a sense that the longer distance suited you better?
I think it suited my personality and my mindset better. I think physically I was more suited to the shorter distances. As I
Mm,
said, you know, coming through high school, I played soccer and other sports, team sports, and I was more explosive. I had more speed. I was always one of the quicker players in the team. But I think just the nature of what Ironman represents, that long day, having to stay focused mentally, problem solve, having to overcome different challenges and keep lifting yourself, keep pushing through. I think it suited me mentally for sure. And that was the challenge I was looking for. By the time I finally got to Hawaii in '07, I'd raced half Ironmans and Olympic distance for 10 or 15 years as a pro athlete. So it was the next step, and it was a daunting step. I feel that the half Ironman races are much closer to Olympic distance than they are to Ironman. Ironman is its own beast, as we know. And I feel at that point, my career, the short distance racing had served me well, but it's just so different. The length of time you're out there, the amount of training you have to do, the nutrition, and that race in Hawaii, being subjected to those elements for so long, it's just so different to anything else. But that's why I wanted to go. I wanted to be challenged.
So you get second first time out, and then come back and win it '08, '09. Then in 2010, Macca initiated a little bit of a group work. And what I always love about how you define a champion is how a champion reacts. We saw Paul Newby Fraser always go off the front, always win until she collapsed in '95, and then she came back the following year, reinvented herself, and won. For you, after 2010. You weren't an aero helmet guy. You needed to take your bike and change that. How much did you change from 2010 to 2011? Because the results were dramatic.
Yeah, changed a lot of the equipment. That was where I started. I mean, I think the hard change was going to be mindset and mentality. So I started with the easier changes first, which, we were coming into a time in our sport, as I alluded to before, with the technology and the evolution of equipment. And I think 2009 was the first time we really saw the specific time trial bikes come in and be a major factor. Non-UCI legal bikes that were built specifically for triathletes and for time trialing. They were nicknamed the Uber bikes. And, Trek in '09 released their speed concept. Specialized had their Shiv. Scott, they all of the big brands had a specific time trial bike. And, I wanted to get on one. So I got in the wind tunnel and saw the difference it made. And I wasn't ignorant to the aero helmet either. But the first 4 years I raced in Hawaii, I didn't wear one. And, I'd had 2 wins in a second. So
It worked.
and it wasn't, it wasn't a complacency that I didn't think I needed to run out every ground ball, I guess, and dot my I's and cross my T's. It's just that, when you have a nice formula that seems to be doing well, you tweak it a little bit, but you don't overhaul it. And maybe I needed 2010. It was the catalyst that led me to a performance that I knew at that point, I hadn't felt like I had raced my best race in Hawaii. And even though I was turning 38 in 2011, and maybe there were some question marks about whether at that age you can still be competitive. I mean, I had question marks myself, whether I could still be a force at that point. But yeah, I just think 2010 was the catalyst that I needed to make some changes. And there were some equipment changes for sure. I got a much quicker bike. I got the aero helmet, I got my position more dialed in on the bike. I got a race kit that wasn't flapping around. It fitted properly. Just took care of the finer details. And then the bigger change was a different mindset. You know, I'd always done well in Kona by swimming close to the front, biking close to who I considered my main contenders, and then running as close to a 240 marathon as I could. You know, I'd watched for 30 years that seemed to be a good strategy to employ in a race that was that competitive, and being the World Championships, and also had extreme conditions like Hawaii does. So I always rode within myself. I always biked within myself in Kona, well below what I was capable of. But in 2011, the mindset changed. I thought, you know what, I'm going to throw a little bit of caution to the wind, and soon as the first attack comes on the bike, I'm going to go with it. And that was Chris Lieto at the airport on the way out, and I was the first to respond. Didn't look back. Just Chris was about 100 meters up the road. I just chased him for 15 miles, and I took a peek back, and Marino and Luke McKenzie, Marino, Van Hoenacker and McKenzie had come across as well, and we had a little group of 4 back, and we'd established some separation back to the front group, which had a lot of the main players, Ray Lert, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so I think 2011 for me was an enjoyable year because I got to race. I guess the shackles came off. I just got to race a different way, a way I had wanted to race.
But you didn't have to before.
I didn't have to. And also, you know, it can be a little irresponsible if you know you can race a certain way and get a great performance just to, I guess, thumb your nose at that to do something else. So, but, you know, we talk about our career as a journey, and the next evolution, I guess, in my journey through the sport was racing a little differently. And that's why 2011 was such a great race and a great performance. I think, you know, I biked close to 420.
15 minutes faster than you did the year before.
Yeah, I was a lot quicker and riding still well within myself. I think we saw the benefits of aerodynamics and well-fitted race suit, much better bike position, aero helmet, the full package. It was the first time I really raced with the full package in Kona, and biked close to 420. You know, they weren't easy conditions that year. It's always tough. It's Kona. And we're still able to close out with a low 240 marathon. So it was very satisfying to get off the bike in second place and take the lead so early on in the race. I felt like a kid again. It was such an enjoyable race. All the love had come back, and yeah, it was just so nice and mentally freeing to break the shackles and do it a different way.
And break the course record.
Yeah, break the course record, which nearly didn't happen because I cramped up with 7 kilometers to go and had to walk and shuffle and shake out the cramps. But that's all part of the fun, as you know, Bob.
It's for you guys,
it's a day of problem solving. So yeah, I was so in the moment and so happy. I just ran through the last special needs and didn't grab any of the salt. I had like nearly a 10-minute lead, and you know, even though it was a good day, it still wasn't a perfect day, you know. And that's what's great about this sport. You're always learning. Like, you're off the front by nearly 10 minutes in a world championship race, but you still make mistakes because you get so excited and carried away. And but yeah, no, it's still a very special day.
So I look at that year, 2011, you win 70.3 Worlds. A month later, you win Kona, and then that's October. Then March, first ever Ironman Melbourne, which I think might be your greatest race. It might, just because of the fact that it was you and Cam Brown, and I think Nico Llanos and Freddie was up there. You had it was like, what, there was 8 guys at some point where there's people everywhere. And I think you even came out of the water behind. You missed the swim start. It was dark, and next thing you know, you missed the first pack in the swim, and it's like, it doesn't start out well. But what do you have, like 8 guys come into that second transition together? Pretty close.
Yeah, it was a good group. It had a lot of strength in it too. Luke McKenzie was in the group. Paul Matthews, Joe Gambles, Greg Bennett,
Nico and Freddie.
And Nico was there. Freddie was there. Yeah, it was the first year there were actually regional championships. So we only ever really had Kona. We had Ironman racing and then Kona. But in 2012, they brought in 3 regional championships. So Melbourne was the first of them. Frankfurt and North America, I think, was in Texas that year.
Yeah.
So the North American Championship. So yeah, it attracted a great field, and it was my first race since winning Kona
Yeah.
6 months before. It was on home soil. You know, you didn't, as an Australian athlete, you didn't often get to race big races in Australia as the reigning world champion. So, and Melbourne, for people who don't know, in Australia, Melbourne is like the sporting capital of Australia. They have the Australian Open for tennis. They've hosted the President's Cup for golf. It's where the Formula One, the Grand Prix is. You know, Melbourne really pride themselves on getting the biggest sporting events, and the media really get behind the events down there, the mainstream media. So, you know, for a weekend, our sport was big news in Melbourne. So, yeah, there was a little bit of pressure to perform as the reigning world champ. And also, I think something for me that was very motivating was that they announced the week of the race that the trophies would be named in honour of two of Australia's greatest ever, probably Australia's two greatest ever triathletes, Greg Walsh and Michaela Jones. So the male winner would get the Greg Walsh trophy, and the female winner would be awarded with the Michaela Jones trophy. So for me, that was huge motivation, because Walsh was actually down there watching as well. So it was a great race. Yes, I think 8 of us got off the bike together. We didn't muck around. I think we went through the first 10 kilometers in under 35 minutes, and we went through halfway in, I want to say about 1:15 or 1:16. I wasn't wearing a watch, but Frederick and Aniko had Garmin watches on, and they were beeping every kilometer, and they were telling me the splits, and I'm thinking, oh, this is way too quick. And actually Brownie, it was Brownie's watch as well. Brownie's watch kept beeping, and he told me the splits we were running, and I thought, well, this is going to be fun one way or the other. And yeah, I was just, so it's funny, you know, because through your career, you learn different lessons, and I probably wasn't as physically fit as I'd been in previous races in my career, but I was very, very motivated to do well because of all the reasons that we just talked about. And the power of the mind is, it's incredible. It's such a powerful ally. I guess it can be your biggest enemy, but it can be your biggest ally as well. So yeah, the last half of that run was all done on mental strength, motivation, my desire to have an Australian winner, because I thought, you know, for once, triathlon is the big story with all the other sports, cricket and football and motor racing. We actually had top billing. And I thought if an Australian can win the race, it'll be a bigger story for the journalists and for the media. So I felt a huge responsibility for our sport to try and win the race and make it a big story. But also from a personal standpoint, I just really wanted to win that race. So it hurt a lot, but I think I got rid of, well, it was really Cam and Freddie were pushing the pace early, and Aniko, but Aniko was the first to drop off, I think, at about 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
And then finally Freddie dropped off at halfway, or just after halfway. And, you know, I was on the ropes for a lot of the run. I thought, how can I get rid of Cam? That year was an interesting year because Ironman New Zealand had been shortened to a half Ironman. And Cam Brown, I mean, Cam, he's the mayor of Taupo. He owns Ironman New Zealand. He's won it so many times.
Yeah.
And when that race was shortened, I think 3 weeks before Ironman Melbourne, and then he said he was coming over to do Melbourne, I said to my wife, oh, he's the fittest man in the world in March every year. So I knew he would be very hard to beat, and he was. I didn't shake him loose until I think 35 or 36 kilometers. And I was just about to drop myself. Again, the power of the mind. I was half a step or 2 steps behind him, and really just hanging on by a thread. And I thought, I'm gonna get dropped at any moment here. And next thing you know, he sort of dropped back a step, and then another step. And again, my mind took over. It was such a funny dynamic. I think I was probably 30 seconds from getting dropped. I'd been running at that limit that's really uncomfortable for 3 or 4 minutes by that point, 5 minutes, hanging on. And I was about to drop off, and he dropped off. So I got a second wind and kept going. And I had to run a 2:38 marathon to get rid of him that day.
He ran
So
2:41. Yeah.
he did, yeah. And I think he missed breaking 8 hours by like 10 seconds or something.
Yeah. He went eight. Right. That's what's funny about it is Nico Llanos went 8:02, and Freddie went 8:01 in third, and Cam went 8 hours, and you go 7:57, and it's like, oh my God, there's not much breathing room there.
It was an incredible race, you know. And you talked before about the start. The gun went off in the dark. We thought, are they going to? We were warming up. It was a cold morning,
Right.
and you know, someone on the beach had said, well, the gun's not going to go off until the sun comes up. And it was pitch black. And I'm thinking, well, the sun's not going to come up for half an hour. Surely they're not going to keep us in the water. But there was a few people behind sort of the start line, just swimming back and forth to warm up. And then the gun did go off. So we started in it was pitch black. It was complete darkness. And
that's pretty scary. Swimming in the dark is pretty scary.
We had someone on a stand-up paddleboard who had a little headlamp on, and we were just swimming straight back towards the business district of Melbourne, which you could see was 40 kilometers away. You could see the lights of the big city, and they said just swim towards that until you hit the first turn. So that's what we did.
That's so cool. Okay, Crowie, now I'm going to do some rapid fire. What's your toughest moment?
Oh, so many tough moments. I don't know. It's supposed to be rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
I don't know. It's taken me a while to come up with an answer. Maybe getting the chicken pox early in my career when, you know, I just watched the Sydney Olympics and I thought, you know, I want to go to Athens. I want to go to an Olympic Games. So the first thing to do was go to the Commonwealth Games. So I qualified for the ITU Awards that year and I seemed to be on the path. And then I got in the best shape I'd ever been in and got sick and missed selection races and trials. It was kind of like getting kicked in the stomach, I guess. But I regrouped, came to the US and
changed everything.
And look, that wasn't without its challenges because I remember 4 years later wanting to go to the Commonwealth Games in Australia. They were in Melbourne in 2006. And the same thing happened. I came home and it was just after I'd won Lifetime Fitness, actually. So I was in pretty good form. And the selection race was 3 months later, but I got sick again. I picked up some sort of liver virus and missed the selection races again. So they were both tough moments, but you know, you just pick yourself up, dust off and keep going.
Happiest memory?
Any memory where the family were there when we were racing. You know, a lot of the best memories are not even actual racing memories. It was just traveling with the family together and going to Colorado 1 year when it snowed in April and we hadn't seen snow before. So Lucy was a baby. That's a good memory.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What made you a champion?
I think just a desire and a passion for the sport. I really loved it. That was the first thing. I loved the training. I loved being outdoors. I loved the fact that our sport was about putting three disciplines together. And I liked to be challenged. I think I had that mindset that the harder it got, I didn't mind that because I embraced it. That's what it was all about. It was about not the path of least resistance. It's about the path of most resistance. You want to challenge yourself and I think I embraced that. So I think I had a good mentality for the sport.
What was your favorite training session?
Anything up in Colorado was good. I like the hardest sessions. You know, when we were training for Kona, I used to like those really long bricks. You saw one of them.
Oh my God. Yeah, you rode up to Estes Park. What was that, like a 112-mile ride? I think you kept it the big sprocket the entire way up the climb and then came back and did 10 one-mile repeats?
Yeah. So I used to love those really big, challenging training days. They were very enjoyable.
You best. Hey, Crowie, thanks so much for taking so much time. I love it. And you need to set up like a 1500 with Lucy and see a little Alexander versus Alexander, see who's going to take that. Because I have a feeling she might surprise you. Man,
I'm a different athlete to what I used to be, Bob. I pick my battles a lot more carefully these days. I won't be setting up any 1500.
You'll set up a 20 miler is what you'll set up. I love it. Has it been hard for you, because you, like you said, you haven't raced Kona in a decade. And I think that was like the greatest thing you ever did was like come to Kona and just enjoy it, right? Do appearances, and you're probably busier Kona week now than you've ever been. But is it hard not to, when race day rolls around, is it hard not to race?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you're on the pier and the gun goes off and you're just so jealous of the athletes in the water because you know the the day that they're in for, the emotions, the elation, the challenges, it's so special. And yeah, you know what? I love it. I love race day there. And it is a busier week, but when you're not racing, it's a lot less pressure and a lot more fun. So
It is.
it's kind of like a big high school reunion every year.
It
You get
is.
back and you see a lot of people, as you know, a lot of people in the industry that maybe you only see that day or that week each year. So I look forward to it. It's so good, and watching the evolution of the sport too. Some of the performances, you know, the last few years with Danny,
Yes.
just being so prolific, and Jan, just so classy. And I'm still a huge fan of Sebi. I think he may have another win in him.
I think so too.
So it's super competitive, and just the class of Annie Haug last year, the toughness of Lucy Charles, and the class of Lucy. There's so many great things to look forward to. Yeah, we look forward to coming back every year.
Craig Alexander has been our guest. Craig, thanks so much as always, bud. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, Bob. Always good to chat.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.